we are in an industry where sometimes you just really have to dig into the paper and extract the meaningful takeaways. And the meaningful takeaway here is that there is no meaningful takeaway from this study.
Welcome back, everybody. This is the Chemist Confessions podcast. I'm Victoria.
And I'm Gloria.
And this is a human conversation on all the skincare science we talk about on the daily. Today, we are going to be talking about tranexamic acid.
I can't believe we haven't done an episode on this one yet.
I think that's just the theme. Every time we talk about ingredient, we're like, right, we haven't talked about that yet.
I think azelaic acid was definitely the one I was like, wait, we never done an episode on it? It's time.
Yeah, okay, but before that, we should mention we have been doing our 30 for 30 sunscreens.
Yes.
Gloria, do you have any thoughts so far?
So far, I have to say, every day I know I have to test a mineral sunscreen. I'm like,
Are you like,
I really hate mineral sunscreen.
Yeah.
And I think I can't even blame any of you for underlying sunscreen because the minerals are just so pasty and everything.
So Gloria has been the one to kind of test most of the minerals because she has dry skin, and that's kind of one of the issues with minerals. So she can have a better comment for that.
And you know what's weird is, yes, I'm testing a sunscreen, but when it's so dry, I don't know how to describe that feeling. It's almost that sensation of like with the sun, it's like it's baking that powder onto my skin. So it just feels really bad all around.
Like your skin is like pottery that's been put in the kiln, and you can feel it wanting to crack.
Yeah, and I'm sitting here like, this doesn't feel good. I don't feel like I'm protecting my skin.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally feel you. For me, I've been testing more of the tinteds. Also, just because my skin is like, with the pigmentation, it's like easier to see because a lot of them are minerals. And then I think coverage wise, I don't know. I have oily skin, so it's kind of just a better realm for me. It's, first of all, there's way more tinted this year.
Yeah, there is. And they're so popular everywhere.
Yes. And I think with tinteds, I'm like, there's definitely something here, but I think it's really hard texture wise. Like you're just kind of surprised by how different they are after wearing it for a while. And oh my God, the amount of clothing that I've ruined because, I'm trying to do like face and neck, I try to do like the proper amount. And you guys will see like sometimes I'll be applying and I'll have 3 fingers out and then I'll put it out. I'm like, 2 is going to be good.
Yeah. So a couple episodes ago, we shared new sun care studies that came out.
Yeah.
And one of the studies we shared was a survey study on how a lot of people layer multiple sunscreens. And I feel like with tinted, that wouldn't surprise me at all because I don't know how anyone should rely on the tinted for proper coverage. It's just so much. It's
so heavy. And I think for a majority of the ones I've tested, I'm already revealing this now, is like you need a makeup wipe.
Yeah.
And then reapply. The other issue too is like after applying so many layers, they just don't absorb. They just stop absorbing. So it's super easy to transfer and actually wipe off. So anyways, hopefully you guys will be enjoying the content. I think a few of the videos have been shared by now. We will definitely do a summary of that once we complete the challenge. But yeah, that's been on our minds these past couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's been a lot. And I will say some of the formulas, I have dry skin. I don't break out. I have found quite a few acne. I'm like, God, my skin hates this formula.
It's funny because like I tell myself like silver lining, it's great to have that, to have a breakout because then you guys can see like the coverage.
Yeah.
But yes, it's been more breakouts.
Anyway.
All right. So let's get into it. We're going to start off with what exactly is tranexamic acid. This segment, I'm going to tell you right now, is going to be really short because ultimately the question we want to answer here is, does tranexamic acid actually do anything? We know that there are some questions on what exactly does it do? Is it truly helpful? And honestly, for me, I kind of understand because a lot of times tranexamic acid products come with other actives. So it does feel like, it's like trying to hide.
Is it really a superstar active? Or is it just there because the name sounds cool?
Yeah. So you guys have probably heard us mention this already. Tranexamic acid used to be used as an injection for those that had excessive bleeding, specifically for women, maybe had really heavy periods. And what they noticed is that those who received this injection, it seemed like their hyperpigmentation was fading. And after that, they actually then started testing it for specifically hyperpigmentation and melasma as an oral supplement. And then now I think at this point, there's definitely been a lot more data as a topical.
Yes. So I had to chuckle a little bit because I was like, dude, if you're one of the poor women that suffer from excessive bleeding from periods, and you had to get this drug to stop the bleeding, I feel like the glow up can come from just not bleeding so much anymore.
That's so true.
Right?
That is so true.
I feel like postpartum, when your body's going through healing and stuff, and I think a lot of people go through skin changes during pregnancy, then postpartum because of hormone change and stuff. And during this time, sometimes I look at myself, I'm like, I swear, like if I feel like I look better, it's just because your body just went to battle for like 10, 11, 12 months.
Yeah.
And then you wake up one day and you magically, your baby finally let you sleep 8 hours. You wake up, you're like, this is better than any topicals I've ever used. I look amazing.
That's so true. And you know what's funny is when we talked about tranexamic acid and we launched our own gold standard with 5% tranexamic acid, I actually had some of my doctor friends message and be like, y'all put what in that product? Because they were like shocked that it was actually now it could be a topical ingredient.
Yep.
And obviously for them, as a topical percentage, that sounds quite high. So they were like, oh, wow, I didn't know that it could be in skincare. So long story short, it is now very much in skincare.
It's very popular.
In terms of mechanism, I think it always feels like the default answer is that it's a tyrosinase inhibitor. But I do want to mention that now it has been looked at in quite a lot of detail. And I did want to share a study. This is actually an in vitro study. And I really liked it just because of the way it was designed. Because the thing about hyperpigmentation and any pigmentation in general is that there are different types. And with different types, there's different types of pigments. All these pigments are generated from different causes, also need to be treated slightly different. But a lot of times it just gets kind of like
all muddled together,
right? But this paper actually wanted to look at 3 specific types of hyperpigmentation. So that's melasma, acne PIH, and solar lentigo. And so if you don't know what solar lentigo is, it's generally looks like dark brown spots that are a little bigger in size. And in this study, what they wanted to do was, first of all, they wanted to see from these 3 different types of hyperpigmentation scenarios, what markers would be flagged for this.
That's actually really cool because we talk a lot about hyperpigmentation biology as a very general concept. It might sound really fleshed out, but reality is, as biology goes, it can be so much more complex than that.
Yeah. And so we'll show the charts here, but ultimately it's not really even about the numbers. It's to show like the breakdowns and the markers that they're looking at and which one's flagged for which type. So ultimately through that, they know that the 2 markers they're looking at is the IL-6 and the ET1. And the IL-6 is actually really common. This is something that a marker that's often flagged in
inflammation and other things.
Exactly. So that one, I feel like it's kind of more like, okay. But ultimately, we do know that inflammation is definitely something that can spur on and aggravate your hyperpigmentation situation. The other thing I did want to mention too that's kind of cool about this study is ultimately they tie this to a term that I don't think any of us have really heard about, which is called melanocyte dendricity. And I think this is something that is going to be a lot more common in probably like, I want to say like 5 years.
Probably, yeah. You heard it here first.
But ultimately what this is looking at is melanocytes. They kind of look like hands. They've got little like tendrils. And the tendrils are the ones that are actually going to be sharing and depositing pigment.
Yes.
Okay. The idea is that the more tendrils you have and the longer that they are, the more pigmentation will produce. So they're actually looking at how can you reduce or even prevent more tendrils from growing. And I think that is a fascinating concept.
Yeah, it is actually pretty cool. And Victoria and I are starting to see these earlier studies that kind of look at this pathway specifically, not just tyrosinase as a rate inhibitor. And that I think there's a lot of fascinating theory that we won't go into too much detail here in terms of what causes these tendrils to grow, how do you stop them, and once these tendrils form in a melanocyte, how can you reduce it, or do you just have to kill the melanocyte?
But doesn't it? It's so crazy because it feels a little bit like sci-fi, right? Like it's like you're almost wanting to morph your cell or prevent it from like taking shape.
I actually also really want to read the studies that didn't work.
Yeah.
Oh no, it backfired. Now it's like 20,000 tendrils. Oh
yeah,
no.
Exactly. So very cool all around. And on top of that, what they further did was they wanted to look at a couple actives that could prevent this dendricity from occurring. So they actually looked at niacinamide and tranexamic acid, which is great. So remember, this is all in vitro. So how this plays out topically still would require further testing. But ultimately, what they saw was niacinamide actually helped with both markers, the IL-6 and the ET1, whereas tranexamic really only helped with ET1. But the idea is that it does play a part in this aspect. So ultimately, I'm not going to get too much more into the details, but the idea would be that, you know, they're ultimately looking at a different type of mechanism. They think tranexamic acid, and most actives do have multiple parts to play in how they provide that skin benefit. So this is one of those that I think is just a really cool story to share.
A lot of skin conditions out there. Victoria and I would love to talk more about the biology, but the reality is it's either too complex to narrow down to what helps, or it's just not looked at all. It's like they do a clinical, it works. Wrap it up. I don't care why it works, it does.
Exactly.
And I love that for hyperpigmentation, they're getting so granular because it is something that takes a kitchen sink approach. So to find these different pathways, it kind of sheds more light into what kind of combinations do better.
Yeah, exactly. So with that, we're going to talk about, does it actually do anything? But before that, let's take a quick break. Speaking of tranexamic acid, we have to talk about our own tranexamic acid champion, Gold Standard. We consider this the AHA gold standard in tackling stubborn skin texture and dull pigmentation, and it does include 5% tranexamic acid.
This booster can be used two ways. You can either add a drop, mix well with your serum as a nightly boost to your routine, or you can use it once a week as a 10-minute rinse-off mask. If you're curious to try, please use the coupon code CCPodcast2024 for a 15% off your first order.
All right, we are back. So now it's time to talk about, so what exactly are the benefits? Do they actually hold up? Is the evidence there?
I really like tranexamic acid and the in vitro data we just shared with you, because you guys will know Victoria and I sometimes poo-poo on in vitro data a little bit. And the reason is not because in vitro data is crap and doesn't tell us anything. Like we talked about, this pathway theory is really fascinating, really insightful. It's just that for a lot of ingredients that you don't take that next leap into from in vitro data, you test it in clinical settings to see what it does in real life human subjects. Thankfully, that is not the case here with tranexamic acid. We actually have quite a bit of clinicals that we would like to share with you guys.
I was actually mildly surprised. I knew like, this obviously has been on our radar for a long time, but since it's been on our radar, I feel like the awareness has definitely grown. So we're going to start off with the bad news. So this is a study that I think if you guys were to go down your own rabbit hole, you may find that would tell you that tranexamic acid necessarily didn't perform as expected. So this is, to be honest, when you first read it, a pretty interesting study. They wanted to do a comparison of oral tranexamic versus a topical tranexamic versus what they call a Klingsman routine that includes something like a retinoid. And long story short, they had 60 patients enrolled, divided them into 3 groups. And after 8 weeks, they did also give these guys sunscreen, which is important for hyperpigmentation, and specifically subjects with melasma. They found that tranexamic acid actually performed the worst. They're talking about, like, I think they mentioned like a 5% benefit,
which is well within the error margin. They might as well do nothing.
Exactly. So this would be a study that, you know, if you read it, would feel like, okay, so really the data really lies in oral tranexamic acid. And to be honest, there is actually a lot of data in oral tranexamic. So anyways, the thing I should point out here is if you actually dive deeper into this, you'll realize there are some questions that need to be answered. First off, the topical itself, I actually couldn't find a percentage concentration of tranexamic.
Right.
You also find that the product that they reference, when you look at the ingredient list, they actually champion other actives like arbutin, licorice root extract, kojic acid, and ginseng extract. So this is not a true tranexamic acid product.
I think sometimes this is why we do what we do. Because we know there are a lot of people that will read the headline, read the summary, and draw conclusions. But we are in an industry where sometimes you just really have to dig into the paper and extract the meaningful takeaways. And the meaningful takeaway here is that there is no meaningful takeaway from this study, except to say the oral tranexamic acid, 250 milligrams twice a day is bueno. That's about it.
Yeah, exactly. I think like we just want to put that out there so you guys are aware. If you guys do research, you will find papers like these.
People have like shame tranexamic acid because of this paper.
Yeah, so just something to kind of look at. And to be honest, if you were to read review papers, there are a lot of them that will say like they're still on the fence. They need to more testing is needed. That's actually true, and the sad thing is that what we share with you guys is already a lot, and at the end of the day, still more needs to be done. Yep. It's just the nature of how all this goes. So we're gonna move on. This is gonna go from worst to best. No, worst to best, then it's just interesting, I guess. But let's start with the lowest concentration of tranexamic acid. This is 2% topical tranexamic acid.
So this study is done with 2% tranexamic acid with just 23 participants. The study is on the smaller side. It isn't bench against a placebo or a no active, but I still think it's interesting because it is done for 12 full weeks. The protocol is a little confusing. They will use the 2% tranexamic topical twice a day, but there's also a 2% mask with
mask moment.
Yep, where they use 3 times a week, so kind of enhances that total amount of tranexamic acid used a little bit. This was a Korean study, so the skin tone range is pretty narrow on a Fitzpatrick scale of 3 to 4. Yeah. We'll put the before and after pictures up. It is taken in a control setting, so you can see the improvement from week 0 to week 12. The pictures look pretty good, honestly. Yeah. It's like that general glow up look, global improvement. And what I like about these series of studies that we'll share with you guys today is almost across the board. All these in vivo studies will measure improvement using the MASI score or melasma and severity index. And the MASI score here was reduced significantly after 12 weeks. So great indicative paper. It isn't placebo controlled, but I think because it is tested at a much lower percentage than many other papers, it just shows that tranexamic acid is promising.
Also, may I just say, these women in the before and after have some fabulous eyebrows.
Oh my God, yes. You're so right.
I was just admiring. I'm like, who microbladed your eyebrows? Because I need that. Actually. Like, just amazing.
I will say, sorry, completely side story. I got my eyebrows microbladed a couple years ago. And then I won't say throughout pregnancy and then giving birth, I'm like, well, I'm so glad I did it because my God, am I never plucking my eyebrows, never coloring them in. It is what it is. So I'm like, thank the Lord.
I'm so glad. The fact you mentioned that is so true because I didn't, and now I really want it.
These lighting is flattering, but sometimes that LA sun hits in a way, and you're like, well, I haven't plugged in like 3 weeks. Anyway.
Don't look at me. All right. Okay, so we're going to move on. The next thing we're going to look at is actually some really interesting comparison data.
Comparison data, they exist.
Yes, and they are actually comparing against hydroquinone.
Hydroquinone, yes.
Yes, so in one clinical, they actually did a split face trial. I'll be honest, split face is tough. Hyperpigmentation is never symmetrical.
Right.
And so it's a hydroquinone solution. They're testing against 3% tranexamic acid. This hydroquinone solution, we should mention, also has a 0.01% corticosteroid that comes with it. They're using these products twice a day, and they're testing it for 12 weeks. After that, they do take photographs, which are not on the same caliber as the before and afters of the previous study, but they do note that both did have a significant decrease in the MASI severity index. And they also looked at side effects as well. And overall, they found that, tranexamic acid was able to perform on par. However, patient satisfaction with tranexamic acid was better. So that's the general takeaway of this. I really just blitzed through it, but wanted to note of this comparison study.
Yeah, we'll put the charts up there. The takeaway here is just like, hey, tranexamic acid shows promise in that it can be benched against hydroquinone. Like Victoria mentioned, this is super random because it's split phase. You'll see that the starting point severity is different with these two groups, which is totally normal. Your one side, we all know which is our ugly side. I know what mine is.
Goddamn. You know,
we all know. Once I had a friend call out to me, just like, you take pictures in one angle. I was like, yes.
How quickly did you unfriend that person?
Do not like that you pointed it out.
Just words need not be said.
Anyway.
All right. Next one. So blitz through that one because there's actually another comparative study where they tested 5% tranexamic acid against 2% hydroquinone. This is a group of 60 women, also tested for 12 weeks and also looked at overall MASI index. Generally, what they did see is that both groups had significantly reduced the MASI score. However, they did see that general patient satisfaction was still better in the tranexamic acid group. The overall takeaway here is, first of all, general hydroquinone levels is usually at 4%. So it's not like suddenly to say that it's equal.
Right.
But we do see that overall it's actually pretty solid. The fact that they're testing on patients with melasma. Yeah.
I will say, I think these patient satisfaction surveys, we usually don't talk a lot about these, or they're just like a vanilla extra data point. But to me, like, as I dabble more in this industry, I start to appreciate those a lot more because ultimately, especially if your degree of hyperpigmentation is mild, it's a bit annoying, but are you going to suffer through 4, 5, 6 weeks of peeling, itchy, really dry skin so that it's better? I would say probably not, right? So like these milder cosmetic alternatives become very important for these people because for me, I have freckles and I do get hyperpigmentation, especially postpartum. Sometimes you're just like, that patch was not there yesterday.
And doing the UV camera is so mortifying now.
No one stitch our old UV camera videos together with this year's, okay? I would just yeah, it's so true. It's just this damage that you've accumulated kind of pops up. But especially now with a baby, am I going to suffer through really peely, dry, itchy skin? I'm not. So again, I started to appreciate these a lot more.
Yeah. So we would say these are pretty good signs. There are a couple more we will share, and we would say these are more just like fun studies to know, but these generally will need more testing. So one of them that we looked at, they actually looked at 2 types of scenarios that would cause, I guess, general hyperpigmentation. So that would be irritation induced, where they actually used SLS, a 5% SLS solution. So inflammation is the general concern. And the second one would actually be UVB radiation. And they actually took skin biopsies and they used, they wanted to see if 5% tranexamic acid could do anything. So they actually called it skin barrier recovery. Can tranexamic acid accelerate that? So they had 25 subjects go through the SLS irritation and UV radiation. And through that, we'll show a before and after picture of one that actually went through UVB damage. So the top one, AB, is the one that actually went through tranexamic acid treatment.
I did not hold back on these subjects.
I know. Oh my God. Dear God. They were like, we need it to burn. And then CD would be the placebo. So overall, they did say that that tranexamic acid did help in the general healing of these scenarios. So I thought that was actually kind of cool because it's definitely a different route than your typical like melasma, melasma scenario. So it's maybe a way that you may have not thought about tranexamic acid for your general routine.
So last thing we want to share looked at tranexamic acid at 2% after patients go through treatments with IPL. Laser treatments that take care of hyperpigmentation can be pretty aggressive. And I actually find this to be super interesting because the reality is if you compare topicals with in-office treatment side by side, the topical might just pale in comparison in terms of the dramatic before-after picture, but that's not to say that they don't have a place in your regime.
Yes.
So in this case, they use 2% tranexamic acid for 12 weeks post-treatment, and they find that the group that does use tranexamic acid completely outperforms the group that didn't use tranexamic acid in terms of that rebound pigmentation post-treatment.
I think that's super cool because a lot of times it's like, just like you said, it's like, feels like, would you rather? Like, if I'm going to do this, then I don't need the rest.
Yeah.
But ultimately, they can work really good together as a team. And I think that's, I don't know, it's just a neat aspect that not a lot of people think about, but ultimately feel like they have to choose between in a way.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like a lot of communication around these things is like, why would you use home treatments when you can just go to the office? But the reality is it's definitely what you do daily really matters.
Hopefully that gives you guys a good idea of the general tranexamic acid world of testing. This is all for the most part pretty new, but there's actually a lot of promise. And in fact, this is actually a pretty sizable amount of data compared to some of the other hyperpigmentation actives out there.
Well, not anymore. We haven't done our Arbutin episode.
Oh, there's a reason for that. So hopefully that is helpful to you guys. In our final segment, we are going to be talking about the actual landscape and how to shop for them. But let's do a quick break.
All right, Victoria, hit me. What animal fact do you have for me today?
Yes, this is for your animal fun fact trivia night. All right, so I think we are definitely in the realm of weird animal biology. So we're going to continue with that trend. Today is actually about squids. So
I just got really hungry. All of a sudden.
yes, the calamari that you will eat. Did you know that the giant squid has a donut-shaped brain? And
That just sounds so insulting. Like, you donut
yeah,
brain.
exactly. Exactly. So yes, that's exactly what I thought of when someone calls you a donut. But what's even weirder is their esophagus actually goes through the brain.
I'm sorry.
Yes. And so I'm sure you guys are now all thinking the next train of thought, which is if you eat something too big, the squid will in fact get brain damage. Which is so bonkers.
That's hilarious.
Yes. So this is why the general nature of the colossal giant squid is to shred their meals very well into tiny pieces.
I will say, images of squid beaks is traumatizing. They look horrifying.
Yes. And the other thing leading up to this and what I found out is actually they actually don't eat all that much or all that frequently because they live in such extreme cold temperatures. They have very, very slow metabolism. So it's actually so slow that they only need to eat 30 grams of food a day.
I bet hummingbirds eat more than that.
Yeah, which is so fascinating. And I just want to say the donut brain is actually, it's small. It's not like a giant donut. It's actually quite
It's
small.
just like a ring around the throat.
Yeah.
And if they eat too much, it's like...
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, so that actually makes that insult extra insulting. Like, you donut?
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm sure you guys really wanted to know this, and you guys are welcome.
30 grams of food, huh?
Tiny.
Oh, you just need one fish for a week.
Yeah.
That sounds like a very zen life. You
Yeah.
don't have to like go hunting very often.
No, that's actually, it's funny you brought that up because, yes, obviously that means they are not very aggressive hunters. They kind of just like
Chill.
wait around for something to like float around their tentacles and then get it. Yeah.
That sounds
They're
like a
not
great
good
life.
hunters,
Yeah.
basically.
You just like chill.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
I eat, great. If I don't, whatever. Wow.
Oh, it'll be fine.
Anyway, versus hummingbirds, it's like, oh, I gotta get my sugar, I gotta get my sugar, I gotta get my sugar. I love that one.
Alrighty. We're going to wrap this up.
Mhm.
All right, so this final segment, let's talk about how to shop for tranexamic acid because you guys are intrigued, right?
Yes.
All right, so we'll be honest. This is another one that's not going to be, we're going to say you have to have this in your routine.
Right.
We see this really as that solid secondary active to
And
add in.
To be fair, for hyperpigmentation actors, I don't think we'll ever be like, this is it, guys. You need this. The reality is it's a
No,
kitchen
there's
sink
no
approach
way.
there.
Yeah.
So the more, it's just one of those conditions that more is more.
Mm.
But we'll say that like in our actives tier, even though it's not a main squeeze, it's a very solid secondary active.
For sure. In terms of amount you need, it's not insignificant. You really want to look for anything between 2 to 5, although a lot of the data seems to be around 5%.
Right.
In terms of shopping landscape, we're just going to name a few. So, of course, we have to give a shout out to our very own product gold standard, which does have 5% tranexamic acid. We pair that with glycolic acid because an exfoliant is something that's also pretty important in your hyperpigmentation routine. SkinCeuticals Discoloration Defense also does a blend of 3% tranexamic acid with 5% niacinamide and 1% kojic acid.
Speaking of the kitchen sink approach, this is one of them.
Yes.
Naturium has a 5% tranexamic acid serum that's pretty straightforward.
Mhm.
Pharmacy has a 3% tranexamic acid toner. I think both of these are great in terms of, you just want to supplement your routine a little
Mhm.
bit. They're pretty vanilla, easy products to just try it out.
Should also mention that the Inky has a 2% one. Overall, I think we recommend definitely giving those ingredient lists a skim because a lot of these are going to be coming with other actives. You will probably, I guarantee, will have some overlap, most likely in niacinamide. Some include vitamin C's and even AHAs like ours. So just something to keep in mind.
Yes, and I will say niacinamide is a big, I don't want to use the word offender, but it's definitely in a lot of hyperpigmentation products.
So it's,
So if you suddenly add a product to your routine, you experience irritation, it might not be the active you think it is. It might just be one too many good things like niacinamide.
As far as, how to use it, this is really going to depend on the product type. But just a reminder that this seems to be tested more often at twice daily use versus once a day. So this is, if you're using, let's say, like a Naturium toner, pharmacy toner, you can definitely use that morning and night.
All right. Hope this was helpful, everyone.
Yeah.
This was our tranexamic acid episode.
Heyo. Gloria, where can they find us?
Yep, you can find us on our website at chemistconfessions.com. You can also write to us at info@chemistconfessions.com. DM us on Instagram at chemist.confessions, or comment on this video with your questions, your feels about tranexamic acid, or any other questions on other actives you want us to cover. And we will see you guys next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye.